Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of My Life as a Critic. I am a professional film critic, Sean Patrick, and I'm taking a critical look at my own work as a critic, and at the same time, a more critical look at the movies that I've reviewed in my 16-year career reviewing movies, several of which have been as an accredited professional film critic and member of the Broadcast Film Critics Association, an accreditation I wear quite proudly. And today's episode, I'm starting to kind of get a feel for this format, and I think this episode will be concise and clear and to the point, and have an interesting conversation with you here about an interesting actor and an interesting film, to say the least. Continuing an early trend here in the episode, I'm reviewing another movie that I hated. Probably more than I disliked Red Riding Hood, and Boogeyman. Boogeyman was that even a movie? That was somebody cashing in on something somehow. I don't know how that came up. I don't know how Boogeyman happened. I'm still kind of baffled on it. It's stuck in my craw for some reason. Still, as it was 15 years ago when I reviewed it. How did that even get made? It's not even a documentary. I'm going to let it go. It was the last episode. It's a time for a new episode. And in this one, I'm going to look at a movie that I remember really, really hating. I think I might have named it Worst Movie of the Year that it came out when I initially wrote it. And again, in one of the first reviews I ever wrote back in 2001, Domestic Disturbance is the title. It's John Travolta, Vince Vaughn, directed by Harold Becker. And boy, I do remember this movie. It's a very clear memory of how much I really hated it. And also, it's indicative of something that I came to identify with, I guess, from learning from Roger Ebert, because he is my hero, as he is to pretty much anybody who's gotten into criticism since he was on TV, since dating back to years. He influenced every critic that came after him, and in learning from him, learning about tropes and learning about things that movies do wrong, those typical things, those typical plots, or those typical characters, typical screenwriting crutches. Ebert, reading him and watching his TV show, you can learn a lot about those things. And I definitely have that influence in this review of Domestic Disturbance. This is a very... I didn't copy anything from Ebert or steal from him, but I certainly learned from him, and I think you'll hear that in this review. And I'm good. This is the point of this is I'm going to read it to you as I wrote it, and the potential is that it could be very embarrassing for me, but I'm going to do it anyway because that's the point of this is self-criticism. So here we go from 2001 for the website Bickit.com, Bikkit. John Travolta has a history of redeeming bad movies. Look at movies like Broken Arrow, The General's Daughter, and Swordfish, all bad movies made better by having Travolta as the star. Through the sheer force of charisma and charm, Travolta takes bad material and makes it fun and entertaining. However, not even Travolta can save Domestic Disturbance, one of the worst movies of 2001. Domestic Disturbance is the story of a young boy who witnesses his stepfather, played by Vince Vaughn, committing a murder. Is the kid crying wolf? Only his father, played by John Travolta, believes he's telling the truth. Of course, none of this matters to the audience, who are always 20 minutes ahead of the characters. The film's marketing campaign pretty well gives away the story, touting Travolta as the good guy. If he's the good guy, obviously there is a bad guy, and make no mistake, you already know who that is. Of course, a good movie could overcome such bad marketing campaign. Unfortunately, Domestic Disturbance is a terrible film. There are stock characters and situations seen many times before. The most egregious is the use of a child in danger, the oldest trick in the suspense genre. Domestic Disturbance also features the classic dumb cop, A movie like this couldn't live without the dumb cop who, despite all the evidence, remains completely ignorant. Ignorant, brain-dead, and insulting, Domestic Disturbance will be on my list of the 10 worst movies of the year. And that is what I wrote about Domestic Disturbance in 2001. And, again, I sound, man, I'm really impressed with myself. I'm not impressed with myself, I promise you. I'm relatively happy with the way that went. Could have been far worse. It's not Ebert good. Don't. I know I was talking about Ebert before. That is not anywhere near, and I've never approached that. I've never. He's just, I idolize him, but I don't have any pretension in that way at all. The influence of him is coming in there at the end with talking about the oldest tricks in the book, and he's talked about that in his many books and in many conversations about film criticism, those kinds of tropes. And the child in danger plot is one of the oldest plots. It's gone away, actually, in the past decade or so. We don't really see it as often, but throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s, early 2000s, you could see dozens of films that would use the easiest way to get tension would be to put a child in a dangerous situation, because who can't feel sorry for a child? If you can't have empathy for a child in danger, what's wrong with you? That said, in a movie, when you do it over and over and over again, and it's so cheap, and it's so easy. You don't have to actually do any character work, because all you've got to do is put a child in danger and we're automatically invested. And you don't have to create interesting characters or situations. And this film, as I remember it, didn't. I'll pause here and I will watch the movie again and then come back and talk about it further. And maybe I can be a little bit more insightful. So we'll see how Domestic Disturbance has changed in 15 years, if at all. Well, this was an interesting experience. So, Domestic Disturbance, I still don't think it's very good, but it is far more professional than I gave it a credit for at the time. I mean, yes, it's filled with cliches, the numerable suspense genre cliches, but I guess what I didn't realize at the time is that Harold Becker is a pretty professional director. And not pretty professional. He's a professional director. He's made good suspense films in the past, and this isn't a particularly good script or good story. And Vince Vaughn's performance isn't very strong, but I mean, there are moments that are actually pretty rousing. The final moments, which are a bit goofy, do compel. You do want to see Vaughn's character get his comeuppance. The film earns that and earns your interest in seeing him get it in the end. So I got to give the film that. It's a rousing conclusion. But to a plot that is really... I can recall from the time being very offended by the way the child is treated in the movie. And I don't know if that's fair or not. I mean, children are abused. But making a movie about it and making it suspenseful and inviting people to eat popcorn to it, maybe that's it. Maybe that's what's offensive about it. Well, that is what's offensive about it, now that I think about it. I mean, it is rather offensive to make a film where you posit an abused child as the main plot point of your movie. I mean, that is essentially here that Vince Vaughn, the stepfather, is torturing this kid. Now, granted, he's an evil guy. I mean, we watch him murder Steve Buscemi in one of the most comical murders imaginable. He stabs Buscemi in his car. They were both in the car. The kid's in the back seat. He witnesses this. They don't know the kid is there. Buscemi's leaning over the seat. Vaughn stabs him in the back with a screwdriver. And Buscemi dies immediately from this. Just immediately. There's no contractions. There's no blubbering. There's no pain. He just is dead from being stabbed with a screwdriver. And then Vaughn rolls his body over and drives him to this some kind of refinery of some sort, where he disposes of the body. But apparently, during this time, the body of Buscemi's character doesn't bleed. It doesn't leave any kind of residue in his vehicle at all. And then he incinerates the body. And when they go to check the incinerator to see if the body is there after the kid has said that Vaughn has murdered someone, they say that they found nothing. Now, either these are the worst cops in the world, or apparently Vince Vaughn stabbed a ghost. I don't know. I'm trying to understand, because from a purely physical evidence perspective, there would be evidence of this murder everywhere. I mean, it would take hours. It would take Dexter-level cleanup to get rid of the body as efficiently as Vaughn does. And you actually see him with a handkerchief wipe off the inside of his vehicle after disposing of Buscemi's body. I didn't mention this in my original review. I should have. This is something that should have caught my eye. This is something, I guess this is the evolution of me as a critic, is picking up on stupid, idiot stuff like this. This is a really big mistake in this movie, is that for the convenience of the plot, they can't have Vaughn spend any time cleaning up after himself. But it is outright comical that he cleaned up a murder with a white handkerchief. Apparently because Steve Buscemi has no blood in his body. I guess. I'm trying to follow the film's logic on this. It's absolutely ludicrous. So yes, Domestic Disturbance remains as bad a movie as I remember, even with the rousing conclusion, as goofy as that conclusion is. And Harold Becker, like I said, is a professional director. He is directing this with talent, with the proper suspense construction. It's just his talent is in service of something that isn't worth applying talent to, because it's such an idiot story. Bloodless murder and using the manipulation of a child in danger, a child being abused and threatened and nearly killed by Vince Vaughn's character. Vaughn really leaning into being abusive to the kid too. It's hard to watch, but I mean, which I guess is the intention of the performance, but nevertheless jarring and really off-putting. Which again, he's the villain character. I know he's supposed to be off-putting, but I mean, it's wrong. It's just wrong to use a child in this way. I mean, we're expected to be in the audience munching away on our popcorn, looking to be entertained. This is not a movie that has any kind of self-seriousness. It's not making a point about actual domestic disturbances, which, I mean, the title, I guess, alone, really, when you look at the title is beyond political correctness. That's not just outright wrong. We're talking about a popcorn thriller, and they call it Domestic Disturbance. Do you know what a domestic disturbance? That's when somebody's beaten up a member of their family. And they wanted to make this as pop entertainment. I mean, this movie, when you look at it from a perspective 15 years later, you can see that this film is really wrong on a lot of levels. Not merely bad, but this is happening to me, folks, as I'm talking to you, by the way, that I'm having this modest revelation. This movie is just outright wrong. I mean, from the title to the premise to everything that happens in it. It's just wrong. And why did anybody think this was okay? To put it in a mainstream popcorn suspense thriller. Why would anyone think this was okay? This movie is disturbing now that I get really getting to the heart of it. I'm really kind of baffled and bothered that this movie even exists. This is kind of fun now. Leave your comments, please. Tell me what you think of Domestic Disturbance. Does it bother you as much as it bothers me? To use, I mean, child abuse as your plot driver and in a mainstream popcorn thriller with Vince Vaughn and John Travolta. And how about that bloodless murder? If only murder could be so easy, apparently. Just kill Steve Buscemi. He has no blood in his body. You won't leave any trace at all. You can burn him and he turns completely to ash. It's incredible. That is Domestic Disturbance. This has been episode 4 of My Life as a Critic. Thank you.